Hi, my name is Trevor, and today I'll be narrating the amazing story of Dravenhawk. He says he died and met his dead grandma, who told him about the future. Hi everyone, my name is Dravenhawk, and I'm here to tell you a story that changed my life forever. When something so shocking takes place that you feel like the whole world is turned upside down? Of course, that's what happened to me when I was 15. But let me properly introduce myself before I get into all the chaos. I've always been really into tennis. I lived and drank tennis. I would watch tennis matches on TV for hours at a time, trying to copy the pros' moves. There were posters of great players all over my room, and I hoped to one day be just like them. But none of those stars were really my hero. My cousin Marcus was. Marcus was a tennis teacher, and he was really great. Not just because he was good at the game, but also because of how he taught. It was something about him that always made you want to give it your all. He was more than just my teacher, he was also my friend and mentor. I would go to the tennis courts in his neighborhood every weekend. That was the best part of my week. We'd work out, talk, and laugh, and every time I left, I wanted to be better. Not just at tennis, but in every way. That being said, the story I'm about to tell took place on one of those weekends. At least that's what I thought it was like at the beginning. I was so excited because it had been a while since I played tennis, and my brother Ethan and some friends were going to join us. I had no idea that today would be the day that everything would change. I came very close to dying at that point. Yes, I know it sounds like something from a movie, but it really happened. It was so real and powerful that I still feel like it happened yesterday. I'll tell you everything that happened that day and how it's changed my life since then in the next part of my story. It's not an easy story to tell, but it's important to me because in the end, this experience not only showed me another side of life, but also got me ready for the future, which I soon learned would be hard. Hold on tight. The story I'm about to tell is a little crazy and scary, but it's also full of hope and new things to learn. This is the story of how I died, even if it was only for a short time, and came back to life with a whole new attitude. So, let's begin. Like every other Saturday, the day began. I was so excited to play tennis that I got up early. It was a little cloudy, but that didn't make me feel any less excited. I quickly put on my best tennis clothes, grabbed my racket, and ran to my car, eager to get to the court. The wind was strong when we got there, almost strong enough to knock you over. But that made the task even more interesting to me as a teenager who was excited. My brother Ethan and some of our friends were already there shooting some balls around the court to warm up. It was amazing when we started to play. I felt like the next Wimbledon winner with every shot. The wind made things more difficult, but I loved it because it pushed me to do better. Then everything changed in an instant. I remember the exact time it took place. My eyes were fixed on the ball as I got ready to hit it back, and my whole body was tense and ready to make the perfect move. Then everything changed. Suddenly, I felt a strong blow right in the solar plexus area of my chest. It felt like someone hit me with a baseball bat. I didn't even understand what had happened at first. My eyes popped open wide, and I let out a quiet scream. Afterward, I found out that the strong wind had caused one of my friend's rackets to slip out of his hand and hit me right in the face. But all I knew at that moment was that something was very, very wrong. I tripped and fell on the court. It felt like the fall was almost as hard as the hit. I could hear people screaming and calling my name very loudly, but it all seemed to be going away like I was falling into deep water. As I looked around, I could no longer tell the difference between the colors and shapes of things. The sounds started to change too. I could hear voices, but they didn't make sense. It was like someone had turned on a radio that wasn't tuned right inside my head. Oh my God, the pain was like nothing I had ever felt before. It was like my chest was on fire from the inside out. It hurt to breathe every single time. It hurt so much in my head that I thought it would burst. I tried to speak to get help, but I couldn't. My body wouldn't move when I tried to. It felt like the links between my mind and body had been cut off. At that very moment, real fear hit. The kind of fear that comes over you when you know something really bad is happening and you can't stop it. It was so hard for me not to scream, cry, or beg for help. It felt like the world around me was getting darker as time went on, even my fear. It felt like the lights were being turned off one by one, and it was getting darker around me. Is this really how it ends? Was the last thing I thought before I lost consciousness. It wasn't the end, though. It was just the start of a journey I never thought possible. What happened next is hard to describe. It was one of those things that you can't quite put into words. But I'll do my best to explain it. All of a sudden, the pain was gone. Nothing hurt or burned in my chest anymore. It was like someone turned a switch and turned off all of my body's feelings. It was like the whole world had stopped making noise, and I was no longer tied to the real world. Then I felt so light that I could have been a feather floating through the air. I opened my eyes, or at least it looked like I did. To my surprise, I saw myself lying on the ground. You did hear that, right? It felt like I was floating above myself as I lay on the tennis court. I had never been through anything so strange. It was almost too clear and sharp to be real. There was no movement in my body, and my friends were gathered around me looking scared. My cousin Marcus was desperately calling my name to wake me up. It was important to me to let them know I was okay and right there, but I wasn't, so they couldn't see or hear me. What's so crazy? I wasn't scared. An intense peace filled the room, like the way you feel right before you fall asleep, but 1,000 times stronger. I was whole again. All of my problems and fears had gone away. As I watched everything happen from above, I began to notice things I hadn't before: the fine details of the trees around the court, the way the clouds moved in the sky, and even the energy coming from the people below. I felt like everything was linked in a way I hadn't seen before. As I hung there and watched what was happening below, I noticed something strange. A rope or cord made of the brightest silver light hooked me up to my body that was lying on the tennis court. Even though it seemed impossible, I knew that this glowing line was my link to my body. It hit me. Had I really died? Did this feel like death? Still, it didn't feel scary at all. In fact, I didn't feel any pain or fear at all. I was at peace. Then I noticed something else. A light appeared far away that was brighter than anything I had ever seen. It felt like a door had been opened to a different world, filled with love and a strong sense of welcome. These bright lights should have made me blind, but they made me feel safe. It felt like it was calling me and telling me to go further. It wasn't just a light. It felt more like a call to something bigger than I was. I knew I had to make a choice at that point. I could leave my family, friends, and the life I knew behind and go toward the light. Or I could go back to my body, my life, and face whatever was there ready for me. The choice I made, whether to stay in this peaceful state or return to the chaos of life, was the start of a journey that would change me forever. I began to doubt everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what might happen after. So there I was, stuck between two worlds. On one side, my body lay still on the tennis court, and people were frantically trying to get me back. On the other hand, a beautiful light pulled me towards something I couldn't understand. It felt natural to me to move toward the light. The peace I felt grew stronger as I got closer. It was like I was diving into a sea of love and understanding. It got brighter, but in a way that wasn't hard on the eyes. The closer I got, the more I could see and hear. And what I saw, wow, words can't describe it. It looked like every color in the world was showing up in front of me, including some I had no idea existed. Oh, and there was music. It was like nothing I had ever heard before. Every note sounded like it was made with pure joy. I saw someone, a woman with a kind face and a smile that made me feel right at home, amid all the bright lights and music. She looked like someone I knew, but I was sure I had never met her before. She came up to me and spoke before I could respond. Her voice was soft but clear enough to be heard over the music. She said, "Welcome, Draven. You're a bit early, aren't you?" I was shocked. How did she know my name? What did she mean when she said early? Who are you? My voice sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once when I asked. She told him, "I'm here to help you. You got a little lost along the way, but don't worry. We're here to guide you back." I had a lot of questions, like where I was. What was going on with me? Was I no longer alive? She smiled again as if she could read my mind. Maybe she could. "Draven, you are in a place between worlds," she said. "You're not quite alive or dead. This is where souls come to get help." She put out her hand to touch me. "Come," she told him. "There's someone who wants to talk to you." I didn't think twice before taking her hand. As soon as our hands touched, I felt a wave of love so strong that it almost overpowered me. It seemed like I could send all the love in the world through her. We began to move through the light together. There was no stopping or flying. It was more like moving like we were part of the light. I started having flashbacks to times in my life that I didn't even know I had as we moved. It felt like my whole life was unfolding in front of my eyes as I remembered times of happiness, sadness, fear, and love. Then all of a sudden we stopped. What was in front of us was what I can only call a chair. But this chair wasn't like any other. It was made of pure light and pulsed with energy that I could feel in my bones. There was a presence so strong on that chair that I finally knew what people mean when they talk about a divine presence. This may seem impossible, and trust me, I still find it hard to believe sometimes, but I promise you that's exactly what happened. I was in front of this chair of light, facing a presence that was so strong it made my knees shake if they could shake at all. The woman who led me there cheerfully smiled and told me, "Go ahead, Draven. He wants to talk to you." At least that's how it felt. I swallowed hard and took a step forward. The figure on the chair turned toward me and I couldn't describe it. I felt like I had the sun, the sea, and the stars all in my eyes at the same time. It was made up of love, power, and knowledge all rolled into one. Then he spoke. Yes, it was him. Call him God, the Almighty, or the Creator. It was him, right there in front of me. "Draven Hawk," he said, and his voice sounded like a million people talking at once, but it was easy to understand. "Hi, son." I stood there frozen. What do you say when God talks to you? Thanks for the invite didn't seem like enough. There was nothing I could say but bow my head in respect in the end. He went on, "Don't be afraid. You can do one of these things." I looked up, stumped. "A choice?" I asked. "Yes," he answered. "You came to this world before it was time for you to. If you want to come back to the world of the living or stay, you can. Your body is not ready yet." I was shocked. Could I really decide whether to live or die? For a 15-year-old, the weight of such a choice seemed too much to handle. I asked, "Why me? Why do I get to choose?" God's smile was so bright that it seemed to light up the whole world. "Every soul has a reason for being, Raven," he told her. "When a soul gets lost along the way, we bring them here to help them get back on track and remember their mission." "I have a job to do." I was shocked and asked. "Everyone does," he answered. "Yours hasn't been fulfilled yet, but you can choose to keep going or not." I was quiet for a moment as I tried to take it all in. There was so much information at once that it was hard to handle. "What will happen if I decide to go back?" I asked warily. "You will go back to your body," he said, "and live your life with all of its ups and downs. You will have the chance to reach your goal." "What if I decide to stay?" I asked. His smile got softer. "Then you will stay here in peace and love forever, but your mission will still be unfinished." I thought about my family, my friends, and how much I love sports. It made me think of all the things I still wanted to do and see. I finally said, "I feel like I need to go back." God smiled. "That was a brave choice, Draven. Remember this moment and your goal at all times." I did. Someone put their hand on my shoulder before I could answer. The woman was the one who led me. "It's time to go," she told him in a soft voice. I prayed to God one last time. It was all I could do to say thank you. He smiled again. "Be at ease, son, and always remember that I am with you." After that, I felt a light pull like I was being pulled back. The voice got quieter and the light went out. The last thing I heard was the woman's voice saying, "Tell your dad that his mom sends her regards." After that, it got dark. When I got back, it was like jumping into a very cold pool. It was a big change from the peace and warmth I had just felt. All of a sudden, the pain in my chest, the weight of my body, and the noise around me all came back to me. When I opened my eyes, the bright light hurt my eyes. As my eyes got used to the new light, I woke up in a hospital bed surrounded by machines that were buzzing and flashing. A nurse was looking at a monitor when all of a sudden she yelled, "He's awake!" The room filled up right away with doctors, nurses, and my mother, whose eyes were red from crying. It was too dry in my throat for me to speak. I was able to ask, "What happened?" after a few sips of water. My mom grabbed my hand and said, "You had an accident, darling." She had tears running down her face. For a short time, your heart stopped. I was shocked. Was everything really true? As he started to examine me, the doctor asked me many times how I felt, if I remembered what had happened, and if I was in any pain. I gave the best answer I could, but my mind was on something else. I could not stop thinking about the vivid and strange event I had in the light with the woman and the talk with, well, anyone. It all felt so very real, but how could I explain it to someone without sounding crazy? I was left alone with my mother after the doctors were done with their tests. She looked tired but happy at the same time. I slowly began, "Mom, I saw something while I was, you know." She pushed me to keep going by squeezing my hand. She asked, "What did you see, sweetheart?" I took a deep breath and named everything. The light, the woman, the talk with God, and the decision I had to make. I told them why I chose to come back. I thought she might brush it off as a dream or a side effect of the medicine, but she smiled through her tears. "Oh, Draven," she smiled, "what an amazing time you had." I was shocked by how she responded. "Are you sure you believe me?" I asked. She said, "Yes. Honey, heaven and earth are connected in ways we can't even imagine. Who am I to say what is real and what isn't?" There was a huge sense of relief in knowing that at least one person didn't think I was crazy. My dad walked into the room right then. He looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. I remembered the woman's message all of a sudden and told my dad, "She asked me to tell you something." My father leaned in to ask, "Son, what is it?" "She told me to let you know that your mom sends her love." My dad's face turned pale, and he sat down heavily in the chair next to my bed. His voice was shaking as he asked, "How could you know that? Your grandmother passed away before you were born. We didn't show you any pictures of her." I was sure at that very moment that what I had seen and felt was real and that my life would never be the same again. In the days and weeks that followed, both physically and mentally, I went through a tough recovery process. Because the racket hit him hard, he needed physical training to get his full range of motion back. But the easy part of recovery was getting better physically. Putting together everything I had seen, done, and learned was the real task. The light would come back on every time I closed my eyes, and I could hear God's voice and feel that peace that words can't describe. Then, as soon as I opened my eyes, I would be thrown back into the ordinary with all of its small worries and issues. When someone has talked to God, how do they go back to their normal life? How can someone worry about prom invites or school grades when they know they have a bigger job to do? I started to see people in a different way. I wondered if they knew their own meaning or how precious and short life is. My friends told me I looked different. I was quieter and thinking more. Some thought it was because of the stress of the accident, while others thought I had grown up. Except for my cousin Marcus, no one really understood how deep my experience was. Besides my parents, he was the only person I told the whole story to. He listened to me without judging or doubting, and then he gave me advice that hit home. "Draven, you have been given a wonderful gift," he told her. "Don't let it keep you from living. Use it to push yourself to fully live each day." That piece of advice was like a revelation to me. I had been thinking about what had happened so much that I had forgotten to enjoy life in the moment. I changed the way I looked at my life. Every moment with family and friends became valuable, and tennis practice went from being just a way to get better at the game to a celebration of the joy of movement and life itself. I wasn't sure what my goal was yet, but I was starting to think it might not be something big or exciting. Maybe it was just about enjoying every moment of my life, being kind, making a difference where I could, and being grateful for each day. This change in point of view caused a big change. I felt better and lighter. What I used to think of as a burden now felt like a blessing. A steady reminder that life is a gift, and each day is a chance to make it meaningful. Even though I had questions from time to time about whether it had really happened or was all in my head, remembering how my dad reacted when I told him about my grandmother took away those doubts. There was no question that I had changed, but I learned that change wasn't something to be afraid of. It was something to welcome. I had the chance to grow and become a better person with each change. I felt like I could handle anything that life threw at me, but I didn't know that the world still had some surprises in store for me. The years after my near-death experience were full of feelings and new insights. Even though I had changed, the world around me had mostly stayed the same. It was really hard to get used to this world with my new point of view. At first, I was excited to talk about my experience and the deep understanding I had learned. I quickly learned, though, that not everyone was ready to hear about it. Some people told me I was making things up, others said I was just making it up, and some even said it was because I had a head injury. Because of this, I became more choosy about who I told my story to, only telling Marcus, my family, and a few close friends who really got it. In the bigger picture, I decided to show what I had learned instead of telling people about it. Tennis was still a big part of my life, but the way I played had changed. No longer was it about being the best or getting the win no matter what. It became more about the pure joy of moving, the happiness of making progress every day, and the pleasure of doing something I loved. I also spent a lot of time volunteering. I helped animal rescues, took part in food drives, and gave kids in need free tennis lessons. They may not have been big things, but they gave me a sense of purpose and fulfillment, and they were the most meaningful way I knew to connect with my goal. It seemed like high school went by so quickly, and before I knew it, I was almost done and thinking about what to do next. A lot of people thought I would become a professional tennis player because they saw how talented I was and thought my future would be great. Still, there was a small voice inside me telling me that this wasn't the right road for me. I decided to study psychology after giving it a lot of thought. My objective was to learn more about the mind and to help other people find peace and meaning in their lives. Going to college turned out to be an interesting trip. Considering my past, learning about the complicated mind and how people act gave me a unique view. There were times when I had to speak up and ask the teacher about near-death experiences and how they fit into the bigger ideas. But I didn't because I knew that some things can't be explained by normal scientific methods. Through college, I did more study on things that were similar to my own. I read a lot of books, joined online discussion groups, and went to workshops all about the subject. It made me feel better to know that I wasn't the only one who had been through this and that other people had too. Even with all the new information I had learned and the personal growth I had experienced, I still felt restless. I thought the world still had something important to show me. After that, on a summer night that seemed normal, things changed again. I had just finished from college and was sitting at home thinking about what to do next. It was very hot. Opening the window to get some fresh air was the first thing that happened. All of a sudden, a bright light came into my room. It wasn't just any light. It was the same light I had seen when I was close to dying years before. I was frozen for a moment and wondered if I was having another close call with death. But then, in all the brightness, I saw a face I knew. It was her, my grandma, the woman who had helped me through my near-death experience. "Draven," she said, and her voice was just as pretty and soft as I remembered it being. "Don't worry, I have something to say to you." I took a deep breath and my heart was racing. "What is the message?" I asked. She gave me that smile that will never be forgotten. "About what will happen, sweetheart. Your future and the world's future." As I sat on the edge of my bed, I found it hard to take in how serious things were. "What's next?" "But why me?" "Because you play a big part, Draven," she answered. "Can you remember what was said about your mission?" I remembered what God had said and nodded, but I told him, "I still don't know what that mission is." She told him, "That's why I'm here, to show you the way." As she got closer, her face became more serious. "Pay close attention, Draven. The world will go through big changes and face big problems in 2024. My heart beat faster. That was now in 2024. "What changes?" I asked, but it was hard to hear me. "There will be political instability in many nations," she began. "Natural disasters that will test how strong people are. Technological advances that have both pros and cons, and most importantly, a spiritual crisis that will affect many people." I paid close attention, my mind racing with what it all meant. "What do I have to do with this?" She gave a soft smile. "You, my dear, have the ability to understand. Through the veil between worlds, you have seen that life goes beyond what we can see and touch. This understanding is what people will need during these tough times. She took a moment to think about what to say next. Most of all in November. Draven, something big is going to happen in November that will have a huge effect on a lot of people. You need to be ready to help. November? I said it again and a chill went down my spine. What's going to happen in November? She turned her head away. I can't say the specifics. You have to go through some things to fully understand them. But remember this, you are strong and smart enough to handle anything that comes your way. Draven, believe in yourself. Believe what you've learned. Before I could say anything, the light started to go out. I wanted to ask more questions to fully understand what was going to happen. My grandmother said in a soft voice, "Our time is running out. Remember that you're not alone, Draven. We'll always be with you and help you find your way." And she was gone just as quickly as she had come. The light went out, flooding my room with the blackness of night. I tried to understand what I had just heard for a long time. November, changes, challenges, my goal. It was too much to handle. A part of me wanted to brush it all off and tell myself it was all just a vivid dream. But deep down, I knew it was just as real as the time I came very close to dying years before. That night, I couldn't fall asleep. I stayed awake and stared out the window, thinking about what the future held for everyone. I had no idea what was going to happen or what part I would play, but one thing was for sure. I was ready for anything. No matter what it took, I was ready to complete my task. I began to get ready for what the future held with a heart full of excitement and a little fear. Now we're in the present day. I'm struck by how much has changed since my grandmother came to visit as I sit here and think about what has happened and what will happen in the future. I started a new career as a psychologist, specializing in helping people who have been through traumatic events or are having existential crises. I also began telling my story at talks about finding your life's meaning. What do you know? My grandma was right about what would happen. Things have been very busy this year. People are confused about what is right and wrong because the news is full of political unrest, natural tragedies, and new technologies. Everyone I work with is going through the spiritual crisis she talked about. They are looking for meaning in a world that seems to be falling apart all the time. In spite of everything, I feel ready. Not because I know everything, because I don't. It's just that I've learned that life is bigger than what we can see or touch. I understand that every single one of us has a task, even if it seems small. When November comes around, I feel the same mix of excitement and fear that I did that terrible night. What's coming up? What can I do to help? You know what? I might not have all the answers, but I'm ready to face whatever comes my way. To make a difference, I will use everything I have learned and done. Last but not least, it's not about big heroic deeds or epic journeys. It's about being fully present, helping those in need, and remembering that life is more than what we can see. So here I am, Draven Hawk, the boy who went into the beyond for a short time and came back with a new view of life. I'm still not sure what the future holds or what November might bring as I wait for the next part of this amazing trip. Even so, I'm ready. Ready to help, ready to learn, and ready to enjoy every moment. The most important things are to live, love, and make a change, no matter how small. This could be the real purpose, not just for me, but for all of us.